Okay, so today we're going to use the skills we learned in the last class where we did long division, synthetic division. We're mainly going to focus on the synthetic division. I've given you a cubic, and if you look at this cubic, your first instinct might be to group it. Don't write this down, just watch what happens. If I were to go to group this, my first two terms have x squared in common, leaving me with x minus 1. My last two terms have negative 2 in common, leaving me with 5x plus 4. You'll notice these two do not match. In other words, this is a scenario where you cannot group it. Instead, what I've done is I've given you a factor, okay? Since I've given you a factor, you can take that factor, set it equal to 0, and you have x equals 4. In other words, I've given you a root now. We're going to take that root, and we're going to use synthetic division to get it down to, it's currently a cubic, we're going to turn it into a quadratic. So to do that, I'm going to divide by what my root is, and then let's see, my numbers would be 1, negative 1, negative 10, negative 8, 1, negative 10, negative 8. So remember, you have to account for every degree. We got a cube, we got a squared, we got an x, and then we got a constant. So to start off, we're going to bring down our first term, and then we multiply 4 times 1. 4 times 1 is 4. Combine your like terms, negative 1 and 4 is going to give you 3. Then we multiply again. 4 times 3 is 12. Negative 10 and 12 would give you 2. 4 times 2 is 8. And our remainder is 0. If you get anything other than a remainder of 0, you know something went wrong because it is a factor. Therefore, your remainder is going to be 0. Now what you'll notice is we started off with a cubic, but now we have a quadratic, x squared plus 3x plus 2. So at this point, we can step back and we can go ahead and factor it. We got 1 times 2 goes on top, 3 goes on the bottom. So we need two numbers that multiply to give us 2 and combine to give us 3. So we could go with 2 and 1. So I got x squared. These two numbers will replace my middle term, plus 2x plus x plus 2. And then once again, we'll just go through grouping. Our first two terms have x in common, leaving me with x plus 2. Our last two terms have 1 in common, leaving me with x plus 2. For grouping to work, those two must be the same, and it's one of my factors. This is going to be your other factor, x plus 1. So now we're looking at what are our roots. So we would take our x plus 1 and set it equal to 0, which would give us negative 1. Since this factor only occurs one time, it has a multiplicity of 1. X plus 2 would be negative 2 with a multiplicity once again of 1. So those are two of our roots. We've got negative 1, multiplicity of 1, and negative 2 multiplicity of 1. Now keeping in mind, we didn't get another factor with a 4 in it, so this one also has a multiplicity of 1. And what you'll notice is your multiplicities match your degree of 3. So those are going to be our three roots. We've got a 4, we've got a negative 1, and then we got a negative 2. If we were to plug 0 in, that means we get 0 cubed minus 0 squared minus 10 times 0 minus 8, which is going to equal negative 8. Remember, your y-intercept is always going to be whatever the constant is. So we can go ahead and plot our y-intercept of negative 8. The leading term in this case is x cubed. The leading coefficient would be that 1 out in front of it. And then our degree is the exponent, which is 3. Because our leading coefficient is positive 1, that means our right-end behavior of our graph is going to go to infinity. It's going to go up forever. Because our degree is 3 and it is odd, that means our left-end bound is going to go the other way. In other words, it's going to go down forever as it goes to the left. So now we're just going to go back to our graph. We'll go to our far right root, and we're going to draw it going up forever because that's what our right-end behavior is supposed to do. Because all the multiplicities are 1, at every single root, our graph is going to cross. So this is going to come down. It's going to hit negative 8. It's going to come back up and cross, and then it's going to go back down. Like so. So this would be an example of what that, a rough sketch of what that graph would look like. Okay? So very similar to what we've been doing, the only difference is now we're given a root and we're having to use division to get the other. This time they actually gave us the root. They said it's negative 2 multiplicity 2. Since it's negative 2 multiplicity 2, That means it's going to bounce at this root. It also means I can divide twice. So I'm actually going to divide by -2. And my coefficients that I'm going to write down for my division are 1, 2, -7. 1, 2, -7. And then let's see, after that we got -20 and -12. So if I were to work on this, my first step is to bring down my 1. I multiply, -2 times 1 is -2. I get 0. -2 times 0 is 0, which gives me -7. -2 times -7 is 14, which gives me -6. And then -2 times -6 is 12, which will give me 0. Once again, keeping in mind, you should get a 0 because it is a factor. At this point, we would typically write it, but remember, this root occurs twice, so I'm going to go ahead and divide again. So now I'll go through the exact same procedure. I'm going to automatically bring to my 1. -2 times 1 is -2. 0 and -2 is -2. -2 times -2 is 4. -7 and 4 is -3. -2 and 3 is 6, giving me, once again, 0. So I started off up here, this was x to the 4th. This became x cubed. So now I have x squared minus 2x minus 3. From this, we can once again factor. So I get 1 times -3 goes on top, and I got -2 on the bottom. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us -3 and combine to give us -2. So we could go with -3 and 1. So I've got x squared minus 3x plus x minus 3. Remember, this middle term is replaced by these two. And then after that, we're going to group these. So I have x in the first one in common, leaving me with x minus 3. The second one has 1 in common, leaving me with x minus 3. Once again, these have to be the same for grouping to work. And then these two will be my other, so I have x plus 1. Turning those both into roots, if I take x plus 1 and set it equal to 0, I would get -1. Since it only occurs once, I got a multiplicity of 1. X minus 3 would be 3, multiplicity of 1. So I got -1 and +3 to add to my roots up here. -1, multiplicity 1, 3, multiplicity 1. Notice 1, 2, 3, 4. That matches your degree. So we've got a -1, and then we've got 1, 2, 3. If I plug in 0, I will get -12. Therefore, my y-intercept is -12. So we can go ahead and add that to our graph. After that, I have a leading term of x to the 4th with a leading coefficient of 1, degree of 4. Because my leading coefficient is positive, it's going to go to positive infinity as it approaches the right. Since my degree is even, my left inbound is going to go the same direction. So let's see. This is going to go up. It's going to come down. It's going to cross at this y-intercept. It's going to go back up. It's got a bounce here, and it's going to go back up. Notice every single root that has a multiplicity of 1, it crosses. If it has a multiplicity of 2, it's going to bounce at that root. So we got a couple more to practice with. This one right here tells me I'm going to have a root at -5. So I got -5 is what I'll be dividing by. And then I've got a 2, 15, 22, -15. 2, 15, 22, -15. Make sure I wrote that down right, because otherwise I'll be kind of wasting my time. I'm going to bring down my 2. -5 times 2 is -10. 15 and -10 is going to give you 5. -5 times 5 is -25. 22 and -25 is -3. And -5 and -3 is 15, which gives you a remainder of 0, which is what we expect because it is a factor. This was a cubic, so now I have 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. So once again, we'll factor this. 2 times -3 is -6. 5 goes on the bottom. I need two numbers that multiply to give me -6 and combine to give me 5. So I got 6 and 1, where the 1 needs to be negative. 6 times -1 is -6. 6 minus 1 is 5. So I got 2x squared. Once again, I'm going to replace the middle term. 6x minus x minus 3. At this point, you're going to group your front two and your back two. My first two have 2x in common, leaving me with x plus 3. My back two have a negative 1, leaving me with x plus 3. These two are the same. So that's one of our factors. And these two will be the other two, which gives me 2x minus 1. So this right here would end up being x equals 1/2, and this would be x equals negative 3. They both only occur once, so we still have a multiplicity of 1. So let's see, we got 1/2 multiplicity of 1, we got negative 3 multiplicity of 1, and then don't forget, we have that negative 5 multiplicity of 1. If I plugged in 0, I would get the constant, which is negative 15, and this is going to be my y-intercept. So I can go ahead and graph that in my roots. Let's see, we have a root at 1/2. We have a root at negative 3 and negative 5. All of these are going to cross. I have a leading term of 2x cubed, which gives me a leading coefficient of 2 and a degree of 3. Since my leading coefficient is positive, it's going to go to infinity. Since my degree is odd, it's going to go the other direction on the left side, which means I'm going to go to my far right root. It's going to go up. It's going to come down, hits my y-intercept. It's going to go up, and then it's going to come back down and cross. Notice my left inbound matches. It's going to negative infinity like it is supposed to. Last one we have, and then we can practice. We've got a root of negative 1. Then we have 1 4 negative 1. Make sure when you're doing synthetic division, you always pay attention. You have to account for every single degree. So in this case, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. If one of them is missing, then you have to remember to put a 0 for that root. Step 1, bring down your 1 and then multiply. 4 minus 1 gives you 3. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Negative 1 and negative 3 combined is negative 4. Negative 1 times negative 4 is 4, giving you negative 12. And negative 12 times negative 1 is 12. And of course we end up at 0, which we expected because it is a factor. We had, what did we have? We had a quartic. We had a degree of 4, which means we are now at a degree of 3. Oops, that's a squared. So now at this point, what you're looking for is I gave you 4 terms, it's a degree of 3, so look for the ability to group it. Okay? My first 2 terms have x squared in common, leaving me with x plus 3. My last 2 terms have negative 4 in common, leaving me with x plus 3. You'll notice these are the same, so that's one of your factors. And then this is going to be your other factor, x squared minus 4. I still have a quadratic, so I'm still not done. I need to factor it as well. Remember, this is a difference of squares, right? Difference because it's subtracting. Squares because, well, x is squared and 2 is squared to get 4. So to factor this, all I have to do is write parentheses and put one is going to be a positive, one's going to be a negative. Take the square root of x squared and put it in the front. Take the square root of 4 and put it in the back. And those are the factors for that one. Okay? So now each set of roots, this would be negative 2, multiplicity 1. This is 2, multiplicity 1. And this is negative 3, multiplicity 1. So if I write those up above, I got negative 3, multiplicity 1, negative 2, multiplicity 1. I got 2, multiplicity of 1. And then don't forget the one they gave you as well. So if I were to start graphing all these, I got negative 1, 2, and 3. Since they're all a multiplicity of 1, it means they're going to cross at every single root. So I don't have to worry about writing anything about bounces. My y-intercept is going to be negative 12, because if I plugged in 0, that would be the answer I would get. My leading term is x to the 4th, leading coefficient is 1, and degree is 4. The right inbound, because my leading coefficient is positive, will go to infinity. Since my degree is even, my left inbound will go the same direction. So I'm going to go to my right side, and it's supposed to go up. After that, it's going to cross. Oh, I have a root. Here's 0, negative 12. Sorry, I have a y-intercept, 0, negative 12. Plot that as well. It's going to come down. It's going to hit my y-intercept. It's going to go back up and cross. It's going to go back down and cross, and it's going to go back up again. and cross. So keeping in mind I'm supposed to go to infinity on both sides, they do match up with that as well. Let me know if you have any questions.